What if the man who shows up in your preparation season isn't your husband, but a counterfeit? Here's something I had to learn the hard way. Just because God is preparing you for marriage doesn't mean the next man who enters your life is the man God has for you. Now, before my second marriage, I was actually in a season of preparation. I was praying, I was preparing myself to become a wife. And then a man entered my life. And I thought, this must be him. The timing seemed to make sense. I was preparing for marriage, and now here's this man. So I assumed he was the answer. But looking back now, I believe I mistook a counterfeit for God's confirmation. Now, I want you to be careful that you don't mistake a counterfeit for God's confirmation. Because here's the thing about a counterfeit. It can look close enough to what you desire that you mistake it for the real thing. And when you add physical attraction, chemistry, and lust, your judgment can become clouded. You can start overlooking red flags. You can start making excuses for things that wisdom is telling you to pay attention to. And that's exactly what I did. Lust would have you negotiating with red flags that wisdom would have told you to walk away from. And looking back now, if I would have slowed down, used more wisdom, prayed, fasted, and really sought God for confirmation and discernment, I would have seen things much more clearly. So if you're preparing for marriage, you're dating, you're courting, you're in a serious relationship, or you simply desire to be married one day, I want you to listen to this message, because today we're talking about preparation, counterfeits, lust, red flags, wisdom, discernment, and confirmation. And most importantly, how do you make sure you don't mistake a counterfeit for the man God actually has for you? If just one woman can learn from my mistakes before she says I do, then this video is worth watching. And before we get into it, if this message is already resonating with you, go ahead and like this video. And I want you to type in the comments, God, prepare me before you position me. Again, God, prepare me before you position me. All right, let's get into it.
It's okay for you. Take a day or two. Get your mind together. Sing it with me. Say, all to Jesus I surrender all.
Hey everyone, welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Des Jackson. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that a lot of my content has been centered around helping women create additional income streams outside of their 9-to-5 so they can create more options and flexibility in their lives. But recently, I really believe God has given me another assignment. And that assignment is helping women prepare for marriage. And I believe God has me speaking about this in this particular season because I'm currently in a season of preparation myself. I've been married twice, once in my 20s and once in my 30s. And now in my 40s, in the third time around, I'm doing things differently. I'm slowing down. I'm seeking God. I'm praying. I'm fasting. I'm using wisdom. I'm paying attention. And I'm allowing God to prepare before another man ever enters my life. And as a part of this assignment, I recently created something that I want to quickly tell you about. It's called Before You Say Yes, Pause. It's my custom interactive marriage preparation tool inside ChatGPT. It helps guide you through the journey from preparing yourself before the man even enters your life, to dating, to courting, a serious relationship, and ultimately discerning, is this the man I'm supposed to marry? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how it works later in this video. But if you'd like to learn more about Before You Say Yes, Pause, I'll leave the information below in the description, okay? Now, I just want to make this clear. I'm not speaking to you as somebody who did everything right, okay? Because I didn't. I'm speaking from lived experience. I've made mistakes. I've experienced the consequences of some of those decisions. And now I have the opportunity to look back and ask, what would I do differently this time? And as I'm walking through my own preparation season, I really believe God has continued to reveal things to me concerning this topic. And if something I learned the hard way can help another woman slow down, use wisdom, seek God, and make a better decision, then I believe there's a purpose in sharing it. Now, if you watched part 1 of this series, you know that video was completely unplanned. I was literally in my bathroom, washing my face, getting ready for the day, and in that moment, I felt led to grab my phone and speak directly to the woman who may be already feeling this urge to prepare for her husband. And if that's you, I really want you to go back and watch part 1 if you haven't already. Go ahead and watch it after this video. If you've been feeling this sudden urge to get closer to God, to get your health together, to get back in shape, to become more consistent with your fitness, to start taking better care of your skin, to establish better self-care routines, to get your finances together, to get your home together, to declutter and get more organized, to heal, to work on yourself, to establish better daily routines, or you just have this sense that I need to start preparing for my kingdom spouse. That part 1 video may be the confirmation you've been looking for to start preparing, because that's really what that first message was about. I shared some of the signs I've personally been experiencing and some practical steps you can begin taking during your own preparation season. So if you've been wondering, why do I suddenly feel this urge to prepare, definitely go back and watch part 1. I'll leave the link below. But in this video, I want to take the conversation deeper, because it's one thing to recognize that you're in a preparation season. The next question becomes, what do I actually do during it? What does preparation look like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially? Who should you allow to help you prepare? And what areas of your life need attention before a relationship even begins? And one of the places God led me to as I started thinking about those same questions was the book of Esther. Because when I went back to Esther chapter 2, I started seeing her preparation differently. And there was somebody involved in Esther's preparation that I honestly hadn't paid much attention to before. Haggai. And his role in Esther's preparation made me start thinking differently about guidance, wise counsel, therapy, and the importance of not trying to prepare for marriage completely on your own. Now, there's another side of this conversation, because as I told you in the beginning, I was preparing before my second marriage, and I still ended up choosing the wrong person. There's a difference between preparation and discernment, and there's so much that I want to unpack around that I decided not to rush it. So I'm breaking this conversation into part 2 and part 3. In this video, we're going to focus primarily on preparation. And then in part 3, we're going deeper into what happened when a man entered my life during my preparation season and how I mistook a counterfeit for God's confirmation. We're going to talk about physical attraction, lust, the red flags I overlooked, prayer and fasting, discernment, and what I'm doing differently this time when it comes to seeking God for confirmation. So make sure you stay tuned for part 3. But first, there's one area of preparation that I didn't really get into in part 1 that I definitely want to talk about here: your finances. Now, let me get comfortable, okay? Because we're about to talk about financial preparation. Because this is one area that I didn't really get into in part 1. But if you're talking about preparing for marriage, We can't leave money out of the conversation, okay? And I'm not saying you have to have everything perfect before you get married. I'm not saying you have to be completely debt free. I'm not saying you need to have a certain amount of money in the bank. But I do believe preparation means being willing to look at your financial life honestly. Your spending, your debt, your credit, your savings, your income, your financial habits, and asking yourself, am I becoming a better steward of what God has already placed in my hands? Because marriage isn't only spiritual, it's also practical. And finances are one of those practical areas that you're eventually going to have to navigate with another person. So for me, part of preparing for marriage is asking, what can I get in order now? Can I improve my credit? Can I pay down some debt? Can I build my savings? Can I become more disciplined with my spending? Can I become a better steward before I'm combining my life with somebody else's? Now, you don't have to wait until marriage to start becoming a better steward. Preparation can begin with what God has already placed in your hands. And this actually connects directly to the work that I've already been doing with women. Because like I mentioned earlier, I help women create additional income streams outside of their 9-to-5. So if increasing your income is one of the things you feel led to work on during your preparation season, I have 2 resources that may be able to help you. The first is my Corporate Exit Challenge. This is my mini course that helps you look at the skills, knowledge, and experience you already have and identify how you can begin turning those things into an additional stream of income outside of your job. And then I also have the Exit Plan Monetization Cohort. That's my 6-week live cohort where you get more hands-on support and guidance as you build and monetize your offer. So if financial preparation is one of the areas you're working on in this season and creating additional income is a part of that, I'll leave the links to both resources in the description below if you'd like to check them out. Now, financial preparation is only one piece of preparing for marriage. Because as I started thinking about this preparation season from a biblical perspective, I was led back to a story I've read before, but this time I saw something differently. And interestingly enough, the book of Esther was actually put on my heart while I was recording part 1. So let's go to Esther chapter 2. So here's the thing. This isn't my first time reading Esther. I've read the book of Esther before, but you know how sometimes you can read the same scripture and then come back to it during a completely different season of your life, and suddenly you see something you didn't see before. That's what happened to me. Because this time when I went back to Esther, I wasn't really focused on her becoming queen. I wasn't focused on the palace. I wasn't even really focused on the king. What stood out to me was her preparation. How did Esther prepare? What did that process look like? And more importantly for me, what can I learn from Esther's preparation during the season that I'm in right now? Because when you get into Esther chapter 2, you realize there was actually a process before Esther ever became queen. She didn't just show up one day, meet the king, and become queen. There was preparation first. In Esther chapter 2, verse 12, tells us that the women went through 12 months of preparation before going before the king. 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and other preparations. Now, obviously, I'm not saying you need to go prepare yourself for 12 months with myrrh. That's not the point. What stood out to me was the principle. There was a process before the position. Sometimes we're so focused on where we believe God is taking us that we overlook what He's trying to do in us before we get there. And I think that's especially important when we're talking about marriage, because sometimes we're so focused on God. Where is my husband? When is he coming? When am I getting married? But maybe during the preparation season, we need to change the question. Instead of only asking God, when is he coming? Maybe we should be also asking God, what are you trying to prepare in me before he gets here? What needs to change? What needs to heal? What needs to mature? What needs to be developed? What do I need to learn? What habits need to change? What patterns needs to be broken? And what needs to be dealt with before I enter a marriage? Because Esther had a preparation period. But here's something else that stood out to me when I went back and read Esther. There was somebody involved in her preparation that I honestly don't remember paying much attention to before. His name was Haggai. And when I went back and read it, I was like, wait a minute, who is Haggai? Because Haggai actually played an important role in Esther's preparation. And that's where I want to go next. Because his role made me start thinking differently about guidance, wise counsel, therapy, and who we allow to help us during our preparation season. So let's talk more about Haggai. When Esther was brought into the king's palace, she was placed under Haggai's care. In Esther chapter 2, verse 9, it tells us that Esther pleased Haggai and obtained favor with him. And Haggai didn't just oversee Esther. He actually played a role in her preparation. He made sure she had what she needed. And then later, when it was Esther's turn to go before the king, in Esther chapter 2, verse 15, she requested nothing except what Haggai advised her to take. And I think that's important because Esther was willing to receive guidance. She was preparing to enter an environment she had never been in before. Now, Haggai understood that environment. He knew things Esther didn't know. And instead of assuming she had everything figured out, Esther listened. Sometimes preparation means being humble enough to admit, I don't know everything. I may need some help. And when I read that, it made me think about what doing things differently looks like for me this time around. Like I said, I've been married twice, once in my 20s and once in my 30s. And now in my 40s, the third time around, I'm doing things differently. And part of doing things differently for me means being willing to get guidance. One of the things I want to do during this preparation season is individual therapy. And I want to do that before a man even enters my life. I don't want to wait until I'm engaged. I don't want to wait until I'm married. And I definitely don't want to wait until there's a problem in my marriage before I start addressing things in me. I want to do the work now because I've had 2 marriages that didn't work. And I think part of wisdom is being willing to look at myself and ask some uncomfortable questions. What patterns do I need to recognize in myself? Why did I choose some of the people I chose? Why did I overlook certain things? What attracted me to certain types of men? And even why was physical attraction sometimes able to override my wisdom? Because honestly, I do not want to enter another relationship, repeat the same patterns, ignore the same things, and expect a different outcome. Preparation isn't only about becoming ready for the right person. Sometimes it's about understanding why you accepted the wrong person before. Because sometimes when a relationship doesn't work, it's easy to spend all of our time analyzing him. What did he do? What was wrong with him? What should he have done differently? And yes, there may absolutely be things that person did wrong. But if I'm preparing for marriage again, I also have to be willing to ask, God, what do you need to show me about me? Not from a place of condemnation, but from a place of wisdom. Because if there's something I need to heal, I want to heal it. If there's a pattern I need to recognize, I want to recognize it. If there's an area where I need stronger boundaries, I want to strengthen them. And if there's something that makes me vulnerable to choosing the wrong person, I want to know that before the next person enters my life. And then when my future husband does enter my life, yes, I absolutely want us to go through premarital counseling together, because there are conversations we need to have as a couple: faith, finances, communication, conflict, family, children, expectations, marriage roles, all of the things, okay? But I also believe there can be value in doing the individual work. There may be things I need to work through, things he needs to work through, and then things we need to work through together. So when I look at Haggai, one of the things his role reminds me of is this: you don't have to prepare alone. Seek God, absolutely, but also be willing to receive wise guidance when you need it. Because sometimes God may use another person to help you recognize something, prepare for something, or see something that you couldn't see by yourself. And that brings me to the next piece, because we've talked about the importance of preparation, but now I want to get really practical. What does preparing for marriage actually look like before the man even enters your life? So let's talk about what preparation actually looks like. Because when I look at Esther, she didn't wait until she was standing in front of the king to start preparing. The preparation happened beforehand. And that's really what I've been trying to communicate throughout this entire series. If marriage is something you truly desire, what can you be doing now before the man ever enters your life? And for me, preparation means looking at every area of my life: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and practically. It means asking God what needs to change in me, what needs to heal in me. Where do I need to grow? What do I need to work on now before marriage? So don't spend your entire preparation season looking for your husband. Spend some of that time allowing God to show you you. Because it's easy to pray, God, send me my husband. But what about praying, God, prepare me to be the wife you've called me to be? And this actually brings me back to something I mentioned earlier: my marriage preparation tool, Before You Say Yes, Pause. It's a custom interactive tool inside ChatGPT that walks you through the entire journey. It starts preparing yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and practically before the man even enters your life. So maybe you're working on your relationship with God. Maybe you're healing. Maybe you're getting back in shape, becoming more consistent with your fitness, taking better care of your skin, establishing better self-care routines, getting your finances in order, improving your credit, working on your home, or simply becoming more intentional about the kind of woman you want to be before you become somebody's wife. The tool helps you think through those different areas of preparation, but it doesn't stop there. It also helps you think about positioning yourself to actually meet someone, because eventually you have to leave the preparation stage and actually be open to meeting somebody. And when somebody does enter your life, the tool moves with you into dating and courting. What questions should you be asking? What should you be paying attention to? What do you need to know early before you become deeply emotionally invested? And then the relationship becomes more serious. It takes you into deeper discernment. And the entire tool is built around my pause framework. It's about slowing down, seeking God, paying attention to what He's showing you, asking the right questions, seeking wisdom and confirmation, and evaluating before moving forward. And here's what makes it different: it's not a PDF, it's not a course. You're actually having a conversation with it. You tell it where you are in your journey, whether you're preparing, dating, courting, or seriously considering marriage, and it guides you from there. It provides questions. It helps you think through those questions you should be asking him. It helps you think through the questions you need to be asking yourself, and it can also guide you through areas of prayer and fasting. Now, I want to make something very clear here. It doesn't replace prayer, okay? It doesn't replace seeking God, and it certainly doesn't replace the Holy Spirit. What it does is help guide you into those areas of prayer. It can help you identify, maybe this is something I need to pray about. Maybe this is something I need to ask God to reveal to me. Because ultimately, you're still seeking God for yourself. This tool isn't going to tell you, yes, marry him, or no, don't marry him. That's not what it does. It's there to help you slow down, ask better questions, pay attention, seek wisdom, and become more intentional about seeking God for clarity and confirmation before making one of the biggest decisions of your life. So if you would like to learn more about before you say yes, pause. I'll leave the information in the description below. Now, one of the reasons I believe this kind of preparation needs to happen before you're emotionally invested in somebody is because once somebody enters your life and attraction gets involved and emotions get involved, it can become much harder to look at things objectively. That's why there are some things you want to establish now before he gets there. What are your standards? What are your boundaries? What are your non-negotiables? What do you believe about marriage? What kind of husband are you actually praying for? What does scripture say you should be looking for? And what are the things you already know you shouldn't compromise on? Decide your standards before attraction starts negotiating them for you. And then there's another part of preparation that I think we sometimes forget. Positioning, because you can prepare, you can pray, you can fast, you can work on yourself, but are you actually putting yourself in a position to meet somebody? Are you getting out? Are you meeting people? Are you putting yourself in environments where you can naturally connect with people? Are you making yourself visible? Because listen, you can pray for a husband, but you can't expect him to just show up at your front door. So now let's say you've been preparing, you've been doing the work, you've been praying, you've been working on yourself, and then somebody enters your life. Now we're moving into another phase, dating and courting. And this is where asking the right questions becomes extremely important. Because one of the things I would do differently this time around is I would ask more questions earlier. What should you ask on the first phone call? What should you ask on the first date? What should you be paying attention to from the very beginning? What do you need to know early before your emotions become deeply involved? Because sometimes we spend months dating somebody only to discover something later that could have told us very early we're not compatible. And sometimes that information wasn't hidden. We just never asked the question. You shouldn't have to date somebody for 6 months to discover something you could have found out on the first phone call. Now, I'm not talking about interrogating somebody. I don't want you sitting around the table on the first date with a checklist like question number 27. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about being intentional, having conversations, listening, observing, and paying attention to what he's telling you, both with his words and with his behavior. Because you're trying to understand who this man really is, not who do I want him to be, not who could he potentially become, not who am I imagining him to be because I'm attracted to him. Who is the man actually standing in front of me? There are certain things you can begin learning very early. What does he believe? What are his values? What does his relationship with God actually look like? What is he looking for? Does he even desire marriage? What does marriage mean to him? How does he talk about women? How does he talk about his previous relationships? How does he handle responsibility? What does his lifestyle look like? And then, does what he's telling you actually match what you're observing? Because somebody can tell you anything, but eventually his patterns will start talking too. Don't become so impressed by what a man tells you that you stop paying attention to what he consistently shows you. And then if the relationship progresses, you become exclusive. Things become more serious and marriage is potentially on the table. Now you go deeper. Faith, character, values, finances, family, children, marriage expectations, conflict, communication. What does he believe about being a husband? What does he expect from a wife? How does he handle money? What is his financial situation? How does he handle conflict? What happens when he's angry? What happens when you disagree with him? Can he communicate? Can he apologize? Can he take accountability? Are you aligned spiritually? Are you aligned financially? Are you aligned on children? Are you aligned on what you believe marriage should actually look like? And if you already have children, that's a whole nother layer. How does he treat your children? How does he interact with them? How do your children respond to him? What are you observing? Because you're not just choosing somebody to date if you're considering marriage. You're choosing somebody you're potentially going to build a life with. And then there's one of the biggest questions for me. Is this actually a God-fearing man? Because somebody can tell you, I'm a Christian, okay? But what does his life say? Don't just listen to a man tell you he's a man of God. Look for the fruit. What does his character show you? How does he treat people when there's nothing to gain from them? How does he handle conflict? Does he have integrity? What does his relationship with God actually look like? Does the way he lives line up with what he says he believes? Because throughout this entire journey, you're not just asking him questions, you're also asking yourself questions. And most importantly, you're asking God questions. You're praying, you're fasting when you feel led to fast. You're seeking God, you're paying attention, you're seeking counsel, you're evaluating, you're using discernment all the way up until the final decision. Do I say yes? Because I don't want you making a lifetime decision based only on chemistry, attraction, emotions, potential, or simply because you really want him to be the one. Before you make a lifetime decision, give yourself permission to pause. And here's where I want to stop for part 2, because there's another side of this conversation that I don't want to squeeze into the last few minutes of this video. What happens when you're doing the preparation and the wrong man shows up anyway? Because that's exactly what happened to me. The problem wasn't that I wasn't preparing. The problem was that I wasn't discerning the way I should have been. A man entered my life during my preparation season, and I thought this must be him. But looking back now, I believe I mistook a counterfeit for God's confirmation. And that's where we're going to pick up in part 3. We're going to talk about the counterfeit, physical attraction, lust, the red flags I overlooked, prayer and fasting, discernment. And this time around, I'm not going to God asking him to confirm the answer I already want. I'm asking him to show me the truth. So make sure you stay tuned for part 3, because we're going to pick up right here. And if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss it. If this video blessed you, give it a thumbs up, share it with another woman who's preparing for marriage. And let me know in the comments, what area of preparation are you working on in this season? Is it spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, financial? Maybe you're working on your relationship with God, your healing, your fitness, your self-care, your finances. Whatever it is, I would love to hear from you in the comments. And again, if you'd like to learn more about my custom interactive marriage preparation tool inside ChatGPT before you say yes, pause. I'll leave that information in the description below. And before you go, if you're preparing for marriage in this season, there are 2 resources that I highly recommend. The first is The Year of the Bridegroom by Tiffany Montgomery. And the second is 31 Prayers to My Future Husband. Both are great resources to add to your preparation season. And I'll leave information for both of those below as well if you would like to check them out. And lastly, if this message blessed you and you feel led to sow a seed into this channel and support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to do so. I'll leave that information in the description below. Any seed that you sow into this channel is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in part 3. Love you. God bless.